I was added to the deed just to help with income. I don't actually own the property. That call comes in more than you think. And every time, the answer is the same. If your name is on a deed in New York, you have an ownership interest in that property. The verbal agreement doesn't change it. The intention doesn't change it. The deed controls. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what title and deed mean, why they're not the same thing, and why that difference matters before you sign anything. What is title? Title is not a document. You won't find it in a folder at your closing, and nobody hands it to you across the table. Title is a legal concept. Specifically, it's your bundle of ownership rights in a piece of real property. The right to use it, sell it, lease it, pass it to your heirs. When those rights belong to you, you have title, whether or not you're holding any paper in your hand right now. So title is the ownership itself. The question is how that ownership moves from one person to another, and that's where the deed comes in. What is a deed? The deed is the physical written document that transfers ownership from one party to another. One person signs it, the grantor, meaning the seller or current owner, and it gets delivered to the other party, the grantee, meaning the buyer or whoever's receiving the interest. A simple way to clarify all of this is if someone passes away, let's say a parent passes away and the only person who's their living relative is a child. So the parent passes away whose name is on the deed to real estate, the child being the heir, right, or distributee, they're the only ones who could potentially own the property. So then they have title, but because the deed hasn't been transferred yet, they don't have the deed. Once someone becomes administrator of the estate, they can then transfer the deed from the parent who passed away to the child who's now the owner of the property. And that's how you unify title and deed. Now, without a properly executed deed, the ownership may not move. So when people use title and deed like they mean the same thing, they're confusing the road with the place you're trying to get to. Why recording matters in New York. Here's where New York gets specific, and this part matters. When a deed is properly signed, delivered, and accepted with the intent to transfer ownership, title passes between those two parties at that moment. Recording is not necessarily what creates the transfer between the seller and the buyer, but recording is what protects you against everyone else. Once your deed's recorded with the city registrar's office, that's where transactions in the 5 boroughs get filed, the world is on notice that you own the property. If you skip that step, a later buyer who had no knowledge of your purchase could come in and claim priority over you. So between you and your seller, recording doesn't make you the owner. You already became the owner when that deed was delivered and accepted, but recording is what locks your claim in against third parties. And in New York, that step is not optional if you want to be protected. The myth: my name is on the deed, but I don't own it. This is the misconception that comes up most often in real consultations, so it's worth spending a minute on. The scenario goes like this. Someone was added to a family member's deed, usually to help them qualify for a loan or demonstrate income. They call and say they don't have any real ownership in the property. They were just helping out. But New York is a title state. If your name is on the deed, you have an ownership interest in that property. Full stop. It doesn't matter what was agreed to verbally, what anyone intended, or what was discussed at the kitchen table. None of that controls. The deed controls. And this works in both directions. If you're the primary owner and you added someone to your deed just to help, that person now has legal rights to your property. And getting them off the deed later isn't just a conversation. It requires another transfer, and depending on the situation, it can get complicated fast. Before any name goes on a deed or comes off one, that decision needs to be thought through carefully with someone who understands what it actually means. The deed is the paper. Title is the ownership right that paper transfers. Now you know the difference, and you know why it matters before a single signature goes on anything. But understanding title and deed is really just the starting point. The next thing most buyers run into is closing costs. And in New York City, that number can stop people cold. It's not just the down payment. There are transfer taxes, mansion taxes depending on the purchase price, title insurance premiums, attorney fees, mortgage recording taxes if you're financing, and a handful of other items that don't show up until you're already deep into the process. A lot of buyers see that final closing cost figure and feel blindsided because nobody walked them through it up front. That's exactly what the next video covers. What closing costs actually look like when you're buying in New York City, what each charge is for, and what you can expect to bring to the table. You can find out by watching this video right over here.